I was the contact listed on my roommate's insurance form. Family was crossed out and rewritten. I found the form on the kitchen counter, half tucked under a stack of mail, and I only picked it up because I thought it was mine. It wasn't. It was my roommate's benefits enrollment paperwork from her new job, and right there under emergency contact, the word family had been crossed out in blue pen and replaced with my name. Not my sister's name. Not her mother's. Mine. My name is Ryan Castillo. I'm 29. I fix commercial HVAC systems for a living. And up until that Tuesday morning, I thought I understood the shape of my own life pretty well. Work, gym, roommate, repeat. Nothing complicated. Nothing that needed explaining. Her name was Sophie Marsh. We'd been splitting a 2-bedroom townhouse outside Denver for a little over a year, found each other through a mutual friend after her old lease fell through, and my old roommate got married and left me holding a rent I couldn't cover alone. It was supposed to be simple. Split the bills, alternate the trash day, don't touch the other person's leftovers without asking. We were good at simple. Sophie was 27, worked as a physical therapist at a sports clinic downtown, had the kind of laugh that carried through walls, and kept a running list on the fridge of things she was aggressively not okay with, which currently included pumpkin spice anything, people who don't return shopping carts, and me leaving cabinet doors open like I was raised by wolves. We got along the way people do when neither of them is trying to impress the other. Easy, unbothered. Nothing you'd write a story about. Except for the fridge magnet with her mother's number that she never called. Except for the way she went quiet every year around Thanksgiving and didn't explain why. Except for the fact that in 14 months of living together, I had never once met a single member of her family, and I had stopped asking, because the first time I did, her whole face closed like a door somebody had slammed from the inside. So when I saw my name written where family used to be, I didn't move for a second. I just stood there in the kitchen holding a piece of paper that wasn't mine to read, feeling like I'd walked into a room I hadn't been invited into. I heard her footsteps on the stairs, and I should have put it down. I didn't. Hey, have you seen my? She started, then stopped when she saw what was in my hand. Her face did something complicated, embarrassment first, then something more guarded underneath it. That's not for you to look at. I wasn't trying to. I thought it was mine. I set it down slowly, like it might go off. Soph, why is my name on this? She crossed her arms, which was her version of putting on armor. Because you're my emergency contact. That's what the form asks for. It asks for family. I know what it asks for. Her voice had an edge now, thin and tired, like she'd had this argument with herself plenty of times before I ever saw the paper. I put down who I'd actually want called, Ryan. That's you. I didn't say anything right away, because there were about 6 questions fighting for space in my mouth, and none of them felt like the right one to ask first. Sophie must have seen it on my face, because she let out a breath and sat down at the counter like the conversation had already exhausted her. You've never asked about my family, she said. Not really. You asked once, and I shut it down, and you never pushed, which I appreciated more than you know. But if you're going to see forms like that, I guess you deserve the actual answer. You don't owe me anything. I know. I want to. She wrapped both hands around a coffee mug that had gone cold an hour ago. My parents didn't take it well when I left home at 22. Not because I did anything dramatic. I just didn't want the life they'd already picked out for me. Same church, same town, marry somebody from the same 3 families they approved of. I wanted physical therapy school 400 miles away, and they treated it like a betrayal. That's not a betrayal. That's just a life. Try telling my mother that. She gave a short laugh with nothing funny behind it. It got worse from there. My brother stopped calling. My dad said some things at Christmas 3 years ago that I'm still not over. I haven't spoken to any of them in 2 years, Ryan. Not because I'm punishing them. Because every time I try, I end up smaller than when I started. I sat down across from her, because standing over someone during a conversation like that felt wrong. So you crossed out family. I crossed out family because family, capital F, the way that form means it, doesn't exist for me anymore. Not in any way that helps if something happens to me at work. She looked at me, careful now, like she was testing the weight of the next sentence before she said it. You're the person who'd actually show up. You're the one who knows my allergies and where I keep my insurance card and what hospital to avoid because of that one incident with the ER wait time. That's not nothing. That's more than blood has ever given me. Something in my chest went tight and warm at the same time, which was an uncomfortable combination for a Tuesday morning. I'm honored, I said. I just didn't expect to find out this way. Neither did I. She managed a small smile. I was going to leave it as a nice surprise. Very romantic. Very well thought out. Devastatingly smooth. I contained multitudes. For a second the tension eased, the way it always did between us, easily, without either of us forcing it. But something had shifted in the room, and we both felt it. I had lived beside this woman for over a year without knowing the actual size of what she was carrying, and now that I knew, I couldn't unknow it. Can I ask you something? I said. Depends how invasive. Fair. I turned my mug slowly on the counter. Do you regret it? Leaving, I mean. Sophie thought about that longer than I expected. Some days. Mostly I regret that I still check my phone every Christmas Eve hoping one of them will text first. They never do. She looked up at me. But I don't regret building something different. I just wish it hadn't cost so much. I didn't have a clever answer for that, so I didn't try to find one. I just said, for what it's worth, you didn't build it alone. Not for the last year, anyway. Her eyes went a little glassy, and she blinked it back fast, like she wasn't used to letting anyone see that part of her. Don't make this a moment, Castillo. I have a shift in 2 hours. I make everything a moment. It's my one skill. She laughed for real that time, and the kitchen felt lighter again. But something had opened between us that didn't close back up. Not that day. Not for weeks. That was the strange thing about the whole situation. Nothing happened right away. There was no cinematic turning point, no dramatic reveal that flipped a switch. Just two people who'd been living side by side for over a year, suddenly aware of how much weight the other person had been quietly carrying the whole time. I started noticing things I'd apparently been ignoring on purpose, the way you ignore a crack in the ceiling because acknowledging it means admitting the whole roof might need work. The way Sophie went quiet on Sunday evenings, which I later learned was the exact time her family used to sit down together for dinner when she still lived at home. The way she flinched, just barely, whenever a headline mentioned families reconciling, like it was a kind of story that could never belong to her. The framed photo on her dresser that was turned slightly face down, which I'd always assumed was an accident, until I realized over the following weeks that it never got fixed. Never got turned back up. Just stayed there, quietly face down, month after month, like she'd made peace with looking away from it. I didn't bring any of it up directly. That wasn't how things worked between us. Sophie let things out in pieces, on her own schedule, usually late at night when the house was quiet enough that confessions didn't feel as loud as they actually were. One night about 2 weeks after the insurance form, I came downstairs for water around midnight and found her sitting on the porch steps in a hoodie, phone in her lap, not doing anything with it, just holding it. You're up late, I said, easing the door shut behind me. Couldn't sleep. She didn't look over. My brother's birthday was today. I sat down beside her, careful to leave space, the kind of space that says I'm here if you want me closer, not the kind that crowds a person mid-thought. Did you reach out? I typed something for different times. She turned the phone face down on her knee, like even the screen felt heavy. Happy birthday, Danny. I typed that, and then I thought about the last thing he said to me, which was that I'd basically abandoned the family for a career nobody asked me to have, and I deleted it every single time. That's a hell of a thing for a brother to say. He didn't mean it, not really. He was 17 and scared of Dad and repeating whatever Dad had said to him the night before. But it still landed. Words don't care whose mouth they came out of first. She finally looked at me. You ever have anybody in your family say something that just sits in you for years? I thought about it honestly instead of rushing to comfort her. My dad told me once that fixing HVAC systems was a fine job for somebody who didn't finish college. I finished a 2-year trade program with honors. He still says it sometimes like it's a fact instead of an insult. That's awful. It is. But I stopped needing him to take it back. Some people can't give you what you're waiting for. Sophomore doesn't mean you were wrong to want it. She was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the dark street. Then she said, so softly I almost missed it, I keep thinking if I just wait long enough, one of them will finally decide I was worth keeping. I didn't say anything clever. I just reached over and put my hand flat on the step between us, close enough that she could take it if she wanted to. She looked down at it for a second. Then she did. We sat there for a long time, not talking, just two people on a porch step at midnight. And I remember thinking that whatever this was becoming, it wasn't going to announce itself with fireworks. It was going to arrive quietly, the way most real things do. 3 weeks after the insurance form, her mother called. I was in the living room when it happened, half watching a game with the sound low, and I heard Sophie's voice change before I even looked up. Sharper. Careful. The voice of someone bracing for impact before the first punch lands. Mom, she said. Why are you calling? I couldn't hear the other side, but I could hear Sophie's silence get heavier with every second that passed. Then her voice cracked just slightly. You're calling because you saw the engagement announcement for Danny's wedding and you need a +1 head count? That's the reason? 2 years of nothing, and this is why you call. I stood up without deciding to. She noticed and shook her head at me. Not now. But she didn't ask me to leave the room either. No, Sophie said into the phone, quieter now, but not smaller. I'm not coming without Ryan. A pause. I understand you don't know him. That's not really the point, is it? Another pause, longer this time, and I watched her jaw tighten. If he's not welcome, then I'm not either. That's not an ultimatum, Mom. That's just true. He's the person who shows up. He's the person on my insurance form. He's more family to me right now than anyone with our last name. I felt that sentence land somewhere I wasn't prepared for. There was more back and forth after that, most of it quiet on Sophie's end, her mother's voice occasionally rising loud enough that I caught fragments. Something about respect. Something about what people would think. Something about how Sophie had always been the difficult one, even as a child, and how this was just more proof of it. Sophie didn't yell back. That was the thing that struck me most. She just got quieter and steadier, the way people do when they've had years to practice not giving someone the reaction they're fishing for. I love you too, Mom, she finally said, in a tone that made the sentence sound more like a door closing gently than an embrace. That doesn't change what I said. The call ended a minute later, not loudly, just Sophie setting the phone down on the counter like it weighed more than it should have. She stood there for a second, hand still resting on it, and I crossed the room without really thinking about whether I should. You okay? No. Same honest answer as always. But I will be. I think I actually meant what I just said, which is new. About the wedding? About you. She looked up at me, and there wasn't any joke in her face this time, no easy exit ready to go. I've spent 2 years telling myself I was fine being unclaimed. Like it was some kind of independence. But it wasn't independence, Ryan. It was just waiting for somebody to claim me back. I reached out and covered her hand with mine, the one still resting on the phone. You don't have to wait anymore. Her eyes came up to mine slowly. That's a big thing to say. I know. I meant it anyway. Sophie didn't kiss me that night. She wasn't ready, and I understood that, because some things need daylight before they're real. We went back to normal for a few days, or something close to normal, the kind of normal where both people know a shift has happened, but neither one wants to be the first to name it out loud. It was Sophie's sister-in-law, of all people, who forced things forward. Her name was Priya, married to Sophie's brother Danny, and apparently she'd gotten Sophie's number from an old group chat that had gone dormant 2 years earlier. She texted on a Thursday afternoon while I was at a job site replacing a compressor unit, and Sophie called me the second she read it, which she never did during work hours. Priya wants to meet me, she said, breathless, like she'd run somewhere instead of just picked up a phone. For coffee. Alone. She says there's things I don't know. Do you want to go? I don't know. I'm terrified and curious in exactly equal amounts, which feels like the worst possible combination for making a good decision. You don't have to decide right now. I know. She stopped, and I could hear her breathing settle on the other end. Will you come? Not into the coffee shop. I don't know, be in the area. In case it goes badly. I'll be in the parking lot the whole time, I said. You want me to bring the skillet just in case? That got a laugh out of her, small and surprised. Exactly what I was going for. I don't think Priya's dangerous, Ryan. You never know. Emotional confrontations escalate fast. Noted. Skillet stays home. 2 days later, I sat in my truck in the parking lot of a coffee shop on the east side of town, pretending to answer emails while Sophie sat across from a woman I'd never met, having a conversation I couldn't hear a single word of. I watched through the window as Sophie's shoulders went rigid, then slowly, over the better part of an hour, started to soften. At one point, she put her face in her hands. At another point, she laughed, real laughter, the kind that surprises the person doing it. By the time she came back out to the truck, her eyes were red, but her face looked lighter than I'd seen it in the entire time I'd known her. Well? I asked as she climbed in. Sophie didn't answer right away. She stared out the windshield for a second, gathering whatever she needed to gather. Then she said, "My dad had a heart attack 8 months ago." I turned toward her fully. What? Why didn't anyone tell you? Because he told everyone not to. Priya says he made Danny swear not to call me. Said if I cared I would have reached out on my own by now. Said letting me know would just be giving me an excuse to come back on my terms instead of his. She let out a breath that shook a little on the way out. He's fine now. Stable. But Priya says watching it happen changed something in Danny. He's been trying to fix things with me for months and didn't know how to start. That explains the wedding invite. Sort of. He wanted to invite me the whole time. Mom's the one who kept vetoing it. Then finally caved because Danny threatened to move the wedding somewhere she couldn't attend if she didn't. Sophie shook her head slowly. 2 years, Ryan. 2 years of silence, and it turns out half of it wasn't even about me. It was about all of them being too proud and too scared to be the one who called first. How do you feel? Furious. Relieved. Sad in about 4 different directions at once. She looked at me. Priya said something else, though. She said Danny told her once that the reason he stopped calling wasn't that he stopped loving me. It's that every time he thought about calling, he pictured Dad's face, and he was more scared of Dad than he was brave for me. He was 17 when it started, Ryan. He's 24 now. People change in 7 years. I think I forgot to let him. I didn't have a neat response for that. Some things don't need one. I just reached over and squeezed her hand, and she let me, and we sat in that parking lot for a long time before either of us said anything else. The wedding was 6 weeks out. Sophie spent most of those 6 weeks in a strange, suspended state, somewhere between hope and the kind of guardedness that only comes from having hope disappointed too many times before. She started texting Danny again, slowly, carefully, the way you'd approach a dog that had bitten you once and might again. She didn't call her mother back. Some bridges, she told me, needed more than a wedding invite to rebuild. I met Danny for the first time 2 weeks before the wedding, at a diner Sophie picked specifically because it was neutral ground, nobody's history attached to the booth. Danny showed up nervous, hands shoved in his jacket pockets, looking younger than 24 somehow, like he hadn't quite finished growing into the apology he'd shown up to deliver. "You're the guy from the insurance form," he said, half a joke, testing the water. "That's me, Ryan." Soph told me the whole story, crossing out family and writing your name. He shook his head slightly, sliding into the booth across from us. I don't know whether to be embarrassed or grateful that our family gave her a reason to need somebody else that badly. Little of both, probably, I said. Danny looked at Sophie for a long moment. I should have called. Every year I should have called, and I told myself it was complicated, and it wasn't, not really. I was just a coward who let Dad's anger become my anger because it was easier than having my own opinion. Sophie's eyes went glassy, but she held it together. "You were 17, Danny. I'm 24 now. I've had plenty of years to grow a spine, and I didn't use them." He reached across the table, not quite touching her hand, just close enough. "I'm sorry. I know that doesn't undo 2 years. But I'm sorry, and I want you at the wedding, and I want you to actually be there, not just physically present while everybody pretends nothing happened." Sophie let out a breath that had probably been sitting in her chest for longer than either of us realized. "I want that too." They talked for almost 2 hours after that. working through years of silence in careful, halting pieces, the way you defuse something without being entirely sure which wire mattered. I mostly stayed quiet, letting them have the space, occasionally offering a joke when the weight of it got too heavy for the table to hold. By the end, Danny hugged his sister in the parking lot for a long time, and when he pulled back, he looked at me and said, "Take care of her." "I mean it." "Already doing that," I said. "Kind of my whole thing now." The wedding came. Her mother didn't say much to me that day. A handful of polite words exchanged near the gift table. Nothing warm, nothing hostile either, just the careful neutrality of a woman still figuring out how to exist in a version of her family she hadn't planned for. But she didn't try to keep Sophie at arm's length either, not that day. She hugged her daughter at the reception, briefly, stiffly, but she did it, and Sophie told me later that it was the first hug in 2 years that hadn't felt like an obligation. Sophie stood beside me the whole night like she belonged there, which she did, and for the first time since I'd known her, she didn't check her phone once wondering if anyone would reach out first. Something shifted for both of us that night, out on the edge of the dance floor while Danny and his new wife had their first dance. Sophie leaned her head against my shoulder, not saying anything, just present, and I remember thinking that whatever this had become, it wasn't something either of us could keep pretending was just roommates being close. We didn't kiss that night either. Some things need the right moment, not just an available one. But 2 days later, standing in the kitchen making coffee like it was any other Thursday, Sophie turned around, looked at me for a long moment, and said, "I've been thinking about that insurance form. The one that started this whole mess. That one." A small smile pulled at her mouth. "I want to know if you'd let me write your name somewhere that isn't just a benefits form." I set my mug down carefully. "Like where?" "I don't know yet." She stepped closer. "I just know I don't want emergency contact to be the biggest thing you are to me." So I kissed her, right there in the kitchen with the coffee going cold and the sun barely up, and it felt less like the start of something and more like both of us finally admitting what had already been true for months. Things moved slowly after that, deliberately, the way two people build something when they've both already been burned by rushing. We didn't announce it to anyone right away. We just let it exist quietly in the space we already shared, easing from roommates into something neither of us had a clean word for yet. Her mother called again about a month later, this time not about a head count or an obligation, but just to talk. It was short, awkward in places, but real. Sophie cried after she hung up, not the sharp kind of crying from before, something softer, more like relief finding an exit it hadn't used in a long time. "She asked about you," Sophie told me that night, curled up on the couch with her feet in my lap. "She wanted to know if you were good to me." "What did you say?" "I said you were the first person who ever made me feel like I didn't have to earn being kept." She looked at me. I meant it. A year after the insurance form sat on that kitchen counter, I filled out my own benefits paperwork at work. Emergency contact. I didn't cross anything out. I didn't need to. I just wrote her name, clean, first try, no hesitation. 18 months after that, I proposed in that same kitchen. No crowd, no big speech, just me holding a ring and saying the only sentence that mattered. "I don't want to be your emergency contact anymore, Sophie. I want to be your family. The real kind. The kind you choose on purpose, every single day. Not just the kind somebody assigns you at birth and hopes you'll be grateful for." She cried, then laughed, then said yes before I even finished getting all the way down on one knee. Danny walked her down the aisle at our wedding 6 months later. Her mother sat in the front row and cried through the entire ceremony. The good kind of crying, the kind that comes from finally watching something heal instead of break. Her father, still recovering, still careful with his heart in more ways than one, stood up during the toasts and said something I don't think either of us expected. He said he was sorry it took a form on a kitchen counter to remind his family what they'd almost let slip away, and that whatever Sophie and I had built, chosen family, real family, deserved more respect than blood ever automatically earned. Sophie held my hand through the whole speech, and when it ended, she leaned over and whispered, You ready to be the man who fixed my family without even trying? I was just trying to be your emergency contact, I whispered back. Everything else was a bonus. She laughed into my shoulder, and for the first time in longer than I could remember, the whole room felt like exactly where we were both supposed to be. These days, when people ask how we got together, Sophie tells them a piece of paperwork did most of the heavy lifting. I just showed up, she says, and then she looks at me like that's the whole point, like showing up was never the small thing everyone assumed it was. So tell me, if you found your name written where family used to be on someone's paperwork, what would you have done? And have you ever had to become someone's chosen family because the given one let them down when it mattered most? Tell me your story in the comments. If you like this one, leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.